Hey, marketers, if one of your target audiences are engineers and technical buyers in Europe, then you will not want to miss today's episode. We'll be walking through the results from the recently released 2023 Decoding Engineers research study, which True Marketing conducted along with our partner, Elektor International Media. Through the time that we'll spend in this podcast today, we'll be comparing and contrasting how European technical buyers behave compared to the global buyers, as research in our other report that we conduct with Global Spec called The State of Marketing to Engineers. It'll be fascinating. And, a little bonus is we were able to ask AI questions. And this is the first time we've had the ability to do that in this research report. So really fascinating study there. Before we get started, I wanted to also remind you that the Industrial Marketing Summit is coming up quickly, January 31st through February 2nd, 2024 in Austin, Texas. There are still seats available. I'd love to see you there. You can learn more at industrialmarketingsummit.com. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast. Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Udo Bormann. He's the marketing manager at Elektor International Media. Welcome to the show, Udo.
Hello, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. And, we've spent a lot of time together in the past few months creating research together and discussing the findings. And I'm excited for us to just rehash some of the things we learned from this project and insights about European engineers and, how they work when they look for to make a purchase.
Definitely.
This is the second time we've conducted research together. It's been a few years. So I thought a good place for us to start before we dive into all the research stuff is just, Udo, tell us, listeners, all of us, a little bit about yourself and who the heck Elektor is.
Sure. Yeah, you already introduced me. So I'm Udo Bormann and I'm marketing manager for Elektor. I'm with Elektor now already 7 years. It's going so fast, I have the feeling, because this company, for those who don't know it, it's a publishing house and we exist since 60 years and more. But we're by far being traditional, I would say. We are actually really, trying to be innovative, future-driven. We do publish magazines like this one. But if you look closely on it, we already incorporated, for example, AI on our cover. So we do try to really see what trends are out there, which way we can jump on and where we can help. And we do that all for electronics engineers. So our main audience are basically pro makers, professional engineers, also students in the field of electronics. So that's our audience we are talking to every day. And me as marketing manager, I try to serve them as good as possible to bring across Elektor's message, but also to bring across new trends, new technologies that they hopefully like to read about and that they really would like to observe and get in touch with. And on the bigger arm, the big connection we try to do is, of course, combining the industry leading companies with the engineers. So not just for work reasons, but also to bring forward innovation and new technology. So I think that sums up Elektor and my position pretty well.
Well, and you poke fun at how it's traditional media and you showed the printed version, but you also have a very, very robust website. So you're not confined just to that printed publication by any means.
Exactly, yeah. And we
Yeah.
also combine it with a e-commerce platform at the moment. So we actually also sell products directly to our engineers, which also makes us a bit unique publishing house because not every publishing house, of course, combines directly everything with an e-commerce system. So yeah, that's why I also said 7 years. Oh gosh, so long, but the time flies at this company because you have so many new things coming up every year, every moment. So it's amazing.
Yeah, and then layer on how dynamic marketing is with new social media platforms every day, or
Definitely.
ones that change their names and all sorts of things like that. So
Yeah, or making amazing research like this one, where we really, I think for us, it was also a step into the world of, hey, how are actually our own engineers behaving and which platforms are they looking at? How is their search behavior? So to be honest, I was also really happy to finally have the document in hands and see the result because that was something where I also was really, really interested and curious about.
yeah, and of course, we modeled it closely after a global report that True Marketing and Global Spec creates called The State of Marketing to Engineers. And so, those listening that are familiar with that report will see that almost every question is a mirror image, because what we wanted to do is contrast how the global audience behaves versus European engineers. And so anyway, I think that's an interesting twist, and one that we're going to highlight as we walk through some of the findings, just to show where there are differences.
Yeah, definitely. But because you might think engineers are all the same, but by far they're not, right? So it really depends where you are, which market you're looking at. And yeah, maybe to summarize, why did we do that as well from our end? I think for us it was three main key moments that we would like to have. Like first of all, identify the most effective marketing channels, then improve the content strategy based on the findings. And then, of course, we wanted to, yeah, educate and forge the alignment between the leadership and the organizations and the sales departments. So we have a good message that we can send out there.
Yeah, that alignment's really important. And in many cases, the engineer executives are, I don't know, skeptical when marketing comes to them and says, no, 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 we shouldn't invest there. We need to move our resources over here. And they say, show me the data, and
Yeah,
so having some metrics behind, some data behind those decisions is always very helpful. Yeah,
definitely.
cool. Well, let's dive right in, Udo. So
Sure.
let's first just set the stage by talking about the demographics of the survey respondents.
Yeah, so in the European market, we had the biggest audience, of course, due to our publication and due to our reach. And we actually gathered more than 1,200 total survey participants, and they all are in the field of engineering, research, and development, and they all have a buying mandate. That was really important for us. So we actually had more survey participants, but we excluded those who actively said, oh no, I don't have a buying mandate, because we really wanted to have the results for this group. And the main company sizes that we have the audience from are basically smaller to mid-sized companies in the range of up to 250 employees. So we had around about 61% participating from those companies. But it also means that the other half is from companies which are even bigger, right? And so we could actually have a really nice overview of the different sized companies. The age group also was one demographic that was important to look at. So we have the age group of 56 to 65 years, which is, of course, a dominant group, which also makes sense because they are like the ones with the experience, they're the ones with the decision power. And so there is no, I think, big surprise. Nice is to see that we also got actually a good amount of people, around about 20%, which have been below the age of 45 years. So, and that also shows us that there is actually a switch coming, right? So in Europe, especially, I'm not sure if you're aware of it so much in America, but in Europe, you actually have this baby boomer generation, which basically was born after the Second World War. And those groups are now in the decision-making processes, and they're in the level and management positions, but they are going to go in their pension, which is well deserved, in their retirement. And now you see already younger generations growing up in these domains and taking over. And that's something I mentioned it because it's interesting to see when we later talk on about AI, because there you do see already switches, and we talk about social media preferences, then you do see that age group does make something. So it is important for everyone who wants to contribute and promote their products to this audience to know, okay, who do I talk to? What's the age group? And then you can also make a better decision on what to put where.
Yeah, no, we have the same dynamic in America that
All right.
that baby boomers retiring and then not a lot of Gen Xers, right? So that's such a small generation. And so
Exactly.
it is interesting to watch just all of this unfold, and we're getting closer and closer to that cliff, right? Of all those baby boomers leaving. So yeah, well, you
Definitely, yeah.
mentioned AI, and oh my gosh, this is so our first time to ever, have the thought that we should ask this question. And because AI, as we all know, is now reached mainstream, sort of. And so, tell me a little bit about what we asked and what we found out.
Yeah, so to be honest, first of all, like you said, I'm also really happy that we could include it in this survey, because I think many people now know about it, have even used it themselves. So the general audience get acquainted with it. But when you look on the electronics, you also know that those engineers already know what AI is since years, and they kind of work in their fields and domains with AI. So the questions we asked was basically, how many AI-based tools are you implementing when you do actively search in order to make a buying decision? And there it was, for me, a bit surprisingly, it was only 15% use it actively. But we are talking about June this year when this survey was conducted. So it's something which probably, when we compare the results from this year with next year, we probably gonna see a big change, because in June, especially ChatGPT was one of the most used AI-based tools for search. At this time, I think we all know that the data that you had access to was limited to the year 2021. And of course, if someone wants to make a buying decision on a recent product, well, then he can't really, or she can't really use this product, right? And this ChatGPT. So I think there's also sense behind this data. The other question we asked was the trust level. So what do you think about the trust level of AI and engineers towards AI, right? And that was, yeah, we had a scale from 0 to 10, and 10 was, of course, most trustworthy, 0 was not trusting at all. And we averaged it out with 4.14, so a bit below the average, the middle. But that shows there are still some doubts, and there's still some fear, even maybe the fear, there's a big fear out there being replaced by AI. Is my job one of them or not? But I think we should ask this question the other way around. It's more like, are you willing to use AI in order to keep your job, right?
Ah,
Because in the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. AI is here to stay. It's not going to disappear. Some people even say we are living in an AI revolution time. So I think this level of trust might be low because of a lot of fear, but I think in the future, again, looking at it could be interesting. And we also ask towards this AI, what are the main words that you connect with AI at the moment? And again, one of the first and highest one was curiosity. So people who use it because they're curious about it. And that's also something which really is a keyword when talking about engineers. Engineers are curiosity driven usually because they want to find new innovations, they want to find out new ways and new facts. So that fits pretty well. So yeah, concluding in this whole what should you do now with AI and now with those key finding and learnings, I think it is important to use and go with what you see at the moment, what is there on AI, what possibilities you have, and then refine the effectiveness of AI-driven solutions, because in the end, you can use it pretty well in order to talk to the audience.
mm. I'm glad you gave the context of when this survey was produced, because it was around that time that there was so much talk about lack of privacy, especially in Europe, when it comes to AI tools. And Italy, for a while, if you recall, had banned ChatGPT altogether. And then they had reversed that around the time that we gave this survey. But it is a representation of the sentiment of the time, right? And
Definitely, yeah.
So I think maybe because of that, we said, are you using AI tools for work? And only 15%, as you said yes. And then we isolated that 15% and said, how are you using it? And what struck me is the number one group was to search for information. And I think that was followed by testing and debugging, and then content creation was sort of a distant third. And so my big takeaway was, okay, these are going to be seen as search engines. And as a marketer, when I'm so focused on optimizing for Google and other places, what does that look like? Are they even giving accurate information? And so, that's a whole episode on its own. So I think trust level 4, because they're seeing the results and not trusting the results from, that they're getting, or they're not willing to try it at all. So I do think, as you say, it's going to look different when we ask this again. I also want to dig into something we didn't, which was, are you using these tools to write code? And I think that was something we could have added of another use case that I'm just hearing more and more becoming more, common for engineers.
Definitely, yeah. And there are new AI tools growing, so to say, right as we speak, right? So it's also insane to see how many new tools and platforms getting built and created every minute, every day. So I think that is also something interesting to see which one of those tools are actually really the core tools which are useful, right? Because right now it's getting overflooded the market, so to say. But at some point you're gonna have, like, let's say 2 or 3 tools that an engineer really sees a benefit from. Then they're gonna use this tool, and that's where there is a chance to tap into the field.
Yeah. Good observation. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the key differences that we saw between the global study and the European market, because I found this pretty fascinating. One of the top ones, and this is a question we ask every year, benchmarking question, which is about information sources. So where do you go to seek information to make purchase decisions on a routine basis? So what did we see in Decoding Engineers in the European market?
Yeah, in the European market, it was pretty clear. Like, we had a clear winner by technical publications in print and in online. Maybe additionally to say, that was a multiple choice option, so people could you really tick several options there and select several options. But that was the really by far over 80% the technical publication, and then followed closely by supplier, vendor websites. So they really go directly on the website to really observe the product, observe the company, and making a decision based on that. And I think, interestingly, especially when we now come to talk about the differences between the markets, is that social media platforms like LinkedIn or also YouTube, they're gaining traction, but there is actually a difference, right?
Yeah,
Wendy?
yeah. Well, on the information sources, I think you had the observation of, okay, so technical publications were number one, but then again, our database that we pulled from our subscribers to Elektor, so there may be a little bit of bias.
Yeah.
Although I think it also speaks highly to the value that you're bringing to people. On the global study, the first 2 places were also technical publications and supplier vendor websites, but they were flipped, right? So supplier vendor websites were first, the industry publications were second. But what was different is number 3 and number 4 were completely different. For the global audience, it was directory websites and industry groups. And for the European audience, it was print publications and trade shows. So I wondered, are you surprised that trade shows are more popular in Europe than the rest of the world?
I'm not sure if I would say surprised, but definitely it is a difference that we see there. And I mean, I live in Germany myself. I visit a lot of trade fairs myself, and I do feel it's really a different Yeah, it's really a feeling, right? If you talk to someone face to face, you see the person in front of you. It's different than being in front of a screen, different than reading a magazine. You know, it's different than a website. So you have this emotional connection to the person, and at least what I see in Europe is that is still really important. And those trade fairs here, they're also really known for being contract and decision-making trade fairs. So there's actually always a big turnover just happening during those trade fairs, right? And that is, I would say, maybe part of this culture, how engineers behave here and how they really make their buying decision and decide on the spot, partly, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised either. I do see a surge in the US of trade show, after COVID, people wanting to have that connection, wanting to get out in person, but never to the level that we see with the big shows in Germany, in particular in the UK. So, yeah. Okay, so you mentioned social. Tell me, what did we find out about European engineers and what platforms are using?
Yeah, so for the Europeans, it's pretty clear as well. We have in social GitHub, YouTube, and Stack Overflow. Those are the three main channels which have been also named as the most reliable ones, which also makes sense. GitHub is an open tool where basically everyone can upload their projects, their software, their data sheets even, and that is something which engineers are really interested in. YouTube was a bit of a surprise, I think, because it's you find everything on YouTube, but that actually it was named number 2 after GitHub was for me a surprise. And yeah, all the other channels, like I said earlier, the LinkedIn and also Reddit, they come basically after those top 3.
Yeah, and the LinkedIn, I think I found this most fascinating. So I think it was 28% of the European buyers found value in LinkedIn, and it was 66% for the global audience. That's a big difference.
Yeah,
And it would certainly,
tremendous.
influence as a marketer where I allocate my budget if I'm focused regionally in one market versus the other. And then, GitHub, that was also popular, but I think it was like a distant third or fourth on the global report after YouTube and LinkedIn. But both reports showed that engineers are not going to TikTok and they're not going to Instagram. That is when seeking information for work. So maybe in their personal lives, they're using those channels, but not at all for work.
Yeah, and this statistics, this analytic overview about social media is also something I'm pretty sure we're going to see a trend there also when we compare the next couple of years. But yeah, for now, I think it's a pretty clear picture. So everyone who really wants to dive deep into those results, I think we should really mention you should download it because it is freely available, right? And you get way more information than what we just talked about at the moment. But this one, I think, gives a really good perspective and outlook, like, okay, which channels should I really serve to? And then I can think about, okay, which are the secondary or tertiary channels. Yeah.
Yes. You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. We should have said that at the beginning. We are certainly not going to talk about every single result. That wouldn't be like fun to listen to anyway. You really need to study the data, look at the charts and graphs, and download the full report. So at the end of this podcast, we'll tell you how to do that. And we'll put links in the show notes too. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So if you're wondering about X, formerly known as Twitter and Reddit and all Quora, all that stuff is in there. And we were, I guess it had already changed its name to X, but we of course had to clarify in the study X, in parentheses, AKA Twitter.
AKA Twitter.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we also have a nice comparison in this report where we also look a bit more on the age group distribution when we talk about the top 3 in the European study, at least, like YouTube, GitHub, and Stack Overflow. That's also pretty clear that everyone that I mentioned earlier who is already a decision maker, but in the age group of 35 to 45, is actually more actively on those channels. So there will also be probably a switch of, okay, which content channels should I really serve to? Where should I start with? Because depending on who you talk to, which age groups they are, it does make a difference already.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another big difference we saw was in podcasts. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, podcasts. I think interesting topic as well. Podcasts, I think here in Europe, we see that actually 58% listen to work-related podcasts. So it's not general podcasts, it's really topic-related podcasts. And ac according to our study, 41% listen less than an hour to podcasts. So that actually gives already a good picture. If you do a technical podcast, if you really want to talk a bit more about your product and services, keep it to less than an hour because that is the audience, that is the preferred time for the audience that they listen to. And yeah, I think that was also a bit different, right, in the global report.
It was, but I remember also when we received the results that you and Eric, Elektor's managing director, were really surprised at the 58%. You thought that was much higher than you expected because you didn't think that there was much adoption of podcasts. So I found that interesting. But yes, on the global side, the number's at 73%. So 73% listen to podcasts weekly for work-related purposes.
Yeah.
So that speaks to bigger adoption. And when I look at the US market specifically, and I followed this would be the third year we've asked this question in the global report. And I've thought about, why is it steadily increasing, 20 percentage points every year for the past 3 years? And I think it's because there's been a proliferation of new podcasts available that are specific to someone's job. There's just more and more and more for them to choose from. And I can't help but think this is maybe an opportunity for European associations and companies to consider starting a podcast or at least being on somebody else's podcast, because I expect this will grow when we ask it again next year.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, definitely great point you mentioned there for everyone who wants to enter the European market, make a podcast and make it in the original native language, because that is also, of course, a big difference, right? Looking in America, where you have mainly one language, and look into Europe, where you have more than 40 languages. But when you focus on the main markets like Germany, French, Netherlands, Belgium, UK, I think then you have your most spoken languages already in hand. And indeed, I can just repeat myself. I'm living in Germany. I'm German myself, and there are not many German technical podcasts out there for engineers, right? And still, the tools are available, the software is available. People listen to podcasts, but it's not yet for the work relation, as we just pointed out. But yeah, definitely a good field to tap into. Good point, Wendy.
Hey, well, what other significant findings do you see in the European report for marketers to grab a hold of as they're building their plans for 2024?
Yeah, building plans for 2024, I think, well, against working for a publication, I think content is king is a bit of a tagline of us, but it is not just for publications, a word and a tagline. It should be for every company out there a word, because in the end of the day, we have seen in the results that a lot of people trust content, be it technical content, but also be it data sheets. And that shows that even in the search results, we saw that people really read up to 5 pages of search results in order to find the precise answer. So if you make a great piece of content, crafting like something which is informative, engaging, and also easily shareable, I think that is something you could implement easily to a key strategy. Especially the last point, this shareability is nowadays getting more and more important, because we also talk about gated and ungated content in the report. So look it up there. But if you have also pieces which are ungated, you can easily share your product across a bigger audience simply by making it in a way that it's easily shareable on social media, that it can picked up by search engines. So I think those are kind of advices I would say are important at the moment when thinking of 2024 and should be implemented. Yeah.
And that's, that's great. It's a hard thing to put in a research report, but we as marketers have just seen that be successful. So I'm glad that you brought that up of having something that's easily shareable and then having a balanced strategy when you look to what do you put behind a form. And on the gated content front, a trend that we're seeing in the US is allowing maybe 70% of the content to be freely accessible and then locking down the other 30% behind a form. So in this way, you're getting maybe a bit more of a search boost. You're providing more information, but you're still having those really, really interesting bits, that someone needs to go download. So it's a nice strategy. Well,
it is for sure, yeah. And also the balance, I think, is important. I think there should always be something which is 100% ungated without any, let's say, need to subscribe or to need to leave an email address, because that's, especially when you have first-time visitors of your website, if they see directly, oh, subscribe here, or oh, you have to leave an email address here to get this data sheet, that's already really not nice and really something that you should avoid to do, because in the first hand, this content item makes a decision for the person, oh, do I really want to interact with this company and this product, or oh, I have to first type in my email address and then get in touch with sales, and then I can get information about this product. So yeah, I think balance is important, but also like the 70-30 is a good advice for content items where you do have a lot of value and people are willing to actually submit an email address or contact details. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did ask about, what types of content do you like? And we asked this in both reports. And if I had to summarize what that chart looks like, they like everything. Like there were so many pieces of content that engineers value. There wasn't, and we see this in the global report, like every year the top four kind of switch places. So sometimes it's white papers, and other times it's CAD drawings, and sometimes it's demo videos, and data sheets are the most popular, but really that's sort of like a table stake, right? You need to get the specs of your product. So it's content, but it's
Yeah. Well, that could be the thinking around, right? Data sheets, everyone wants it, everyone looks for it. So make this one more attractive, make this one appealing, make this one maybe even a promotional item at the end of the day, right? Like by adding some small feature, like, hey, we have, by the way, another product which is similar to this one, and you can check it out with this data sheet, right? So I think there are some nice key learnings, and I agree. In the end, it's many different content preferences, but it does make sense because they decide not. I don't want to say anything bad about phones, but they don't say, oh, I just want to buy the next iPhone or the next Samsung here. So one data sheet is enough. No, they really buy technical products and services, so they have to get a good knowledge about what they're buying. So it makes sense that they also go through a variety of different items.
Yeah. Well, another thing we studied was search behavior and how deep technical buyers are willing to go in Google before starting their search over again. So what did that look like in this study?
Yeah, I think I triggered it earlier already a bit. So yeah, it's interesting to see that actually 31% are willing to go beyond 5 pages of search results. So everyone who ever has been on Google, and I think we all have been on Google once, will know that going through 5 pages is already a lot of works, but they're willing to do that, right? And that's a big surprise for me that so many actually still do it. Meaning there is an overload of content, obviously, that is not serving their needs. But when we now think, how can you go back on the first page? Well, then we are talking about paid ads, which was also part of this research. But yeah, unfortunately, 58% saying that they either actively avoid looking at paid ads or they're showing some limited interest. So yeah, what does it tell us? I think paid ads help, but still the SEO is really important. So you really need to be organically on the page in the first 5 pages
Yeah, and
in order to get
Google
seen.
Google is trying so hard to get you to stop at page one, right? They have featured snippets and these quick questions and answers. And you just, for a technical buyer, right, they want specificity, they want the credibility of the source, just don't trust page one. And it'll be interesting to see, it looks like, Google is moving to this new format that will look similar to how you search in a large language model like ChatGPT or Bard. So it'd be interesting to study this again and see if behavior changes, if they find page one more trusted. My gut feel says it'll continue to be this way, that they'll go deeper and that long tail of search will still be alive for technical buyers, but we shall see.
Yeah. If we combine it with the learnings from the AI, the trust level is low on AI. And I mean, Bing search already started using the language model, right? So you already see how it could look like. And I think not many of at least our respondents use Bing search. So there's also something to say about it, right? But again, that's a development, and it's is something what was seen on this moment when they did the survey. So I think definitely interesting times ahead. There's another actually tip I would say that you could really look at is the way, hey, the first 5 pages, that's a lot of competition already, right? And if you know your product, you know usually also which market you're working on, which industry field. So you could actually see, hey, are there any websites, networks, groups that I could actually cooperate and collaborate on the content so that my product will be listed at 4, 5, or 6 pages on the first search results. So then, of course, your product gets lifted up, and this person who really goes through all of them reads 10 times your name. And then at the end of the day, he's probably or she's going to decide, oh, yeah, well, this product sounds promising, right?
Right. I keep hearing it everywhere I go.
Yeah, exactly. So networking with others, also with competitors, is something that we haven't really looked at, but I think for companies in this domain also really important to do.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'll add on to that. Don't forget about video, because video results are being shown right along with printed results. And for companies out there that aren't investing in video, we know from the study that engineers turn to video. We already talked about YouTube, and video as a content piece is very popular. And so for a multitude of reasons, don't ignore video and make that part of your content strategy.
Definitely, yeah. And there's a whole bunch of results on videos, so I think that would be a bit too much for right now, but definitely video is one of the key things marketers should have on their screen for 2024 as well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if someone were to download the report, what other areas did we study that they can go read about?
Yeah, I think trade shows we mentioned, of course, already, but there's maybe also a bit more to say about it that we actually ask in the future. So we actually ask the European audience, hey, which of the major trade fairs for engineers are you going to attend in person? And we actually had 56% saying they're gonna attend at least one. So there are several ones in Europe which are really famous, and like Electronica or Embedded World. But those you basically see that the engineers are going there and they attended. And additionally to this question, we even made a word cloud because we made it an open question, right? So everyone could type in which events are they going to check out and to visit. So yeah, if you don't know yet what your event plan looks like for 2024, check out those results, because then you basically know which one you really need to be present and where you have to showcase your products, because the engineers will be there.
Great. And then we asked about, and I thought about this because you mentioned the word cloud. We also have a word cloud about influencers. So who are technical influencers or pundits that people turn to? Where do they find them? So that's included in the report. You can go look at that. And we also asked about newsletters. So Udo, are newsletters dead?
I don't think so, Wendy. But the way you ask, I think you know the answer already. And the point is that in newsletters is definitely one of the biggest and most important medium still, and will be in the future when we come to cookieless targeting and all those changes that are coming from on different social media platforms, but also different search platforms. If you have someone in your newsletter then you already have the first step done, right? Then you have to seal the deal, so to say, by contributing with great content that they really want to have. So we actually looked into is it that, and in a way that we asked them how many newsletters are you subscribed to, and that actually averaged out by a 3.7. So they basically get a 3.7 newsletters. That's different newsletters. So let's round it up to 4 different newsletters they're subscribed to in order to make a decision, right? And that's a lot. And we also ask, how often should you send out a newsletter? And I think that is super important for marketeers to know, hey, what should be the cadence of my delivery? And that was 49% answered by weekly. So once a week is totally enough, and it shouldn't be more. It also makes sense because if you subscribe to 4 different newsletters and then you get already from everyone 4 per week, well, your week is already almost full, right? And we all know
Right.
almost every company sends out more than one. So it's really it is a good insight as well. And it was clearly said that the newsletter are not that at all. It's an information source and it's a source to make a decision for them.
Yeah. Well, gosh, as you could tell, there's a lot in this report, and we're excited about all the findings that we uncovered. So without any more pause, where can people who are listening go to download the report and find out more about Elektor and connect with you, Udo?
Yeah, let's start the other way around. It's the easiest. You can find me on LinkedIn simply by putting in my name. For the report, you provide a really great global report on true marketing, and we have a counterpart on Elektor. I just do this one because our influencer always does look in the description below. So
Perfect.
just check it out. The link will be there, and have a good read, and hopefully you get a lot of insights. And if you do have questions, reach out.
All right. Thank you, Udo.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our e-newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.